So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining the Care Vision's Healthy Aging conversation this week. I was going to say autumn has arrived, but I don't think it has yet. We seem to be back into summer. I was mowing the grass yesterday and not a leaf had fallen. So summer still seems to be with us. My guest I'll introduce in a few moments is Shelagh Marshall, who's up in Skipton, just outside Skipton in Yorkshire. And we'll have a good conversation for half an hour. But while people are just joining and getting settled in with your cups of tea for this afternoon's conversation, I just wanted to bring you up to date with a couple of the new things that have been produced by Care Visions in the past week. As regulars on this conversation will know, Care Visions is a provider of care and support for older people and people with dementia. And it was initially doing this through community-based services, but with coronavirus, everything's gone online, as we know. And so what's happening now is a whole range of activities that are available online. And there are two new videos that they produced this week that I just wanted to introduce you to. One is a partnership for the first time, I think, in this way with the British Library, who have a fantastic audio resource, as well as their printed books. They have an enormous audio resource as well. And they've produced a film, almost half an hour long, about travels around the British coastline, using amazing archive material from the British Library. And so please do have a look at that. It's particularly designed for people with developing dementia and cognitive impairment. It takes you on a journey starting in Margate and going around the coast of the British Isles, stopping off at a couple of places as you go. So please do look at that. It's called Travels Around the British Coastline, a Facebook, a Care Visions partnership with the British Library, now available on Facebook. And the second one continues the Reminiscence series that Care Visions have been producing for a number of weeks. So if you're a country and western fan and you've got your Stetsons and your cowboy hat on, then this is the week for you. There's a lovely film about Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline. And I was amazed when I watched it to think it's 50 years, just over 50 years actually, since A Boy Named Sue, sung by Johnny Cash. And indeed 60 years since Patsy Cline Sing Crazy, probably her most famous song. And you can hear those and others on that latest programme from Care Visions on their Facebook site. Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline, two country music icons. And of course, country music has been with us for many years and is as thriving today as it was 50 years ago. So we're just about coming up to 4 o'clock. I'm delighted to welcome Shelagh Marshall, who, as I say, lives just outside Skipton, has joined us from her home this afternoon. Thank you for joining this afternoon, Shelagh. Can I just start? It's always nice to start on a positive note because there's lots of things that we worry about and that are on our minds at the moment. So please do share with me a happy moment you've had in the past week.
I'm going to extend it a little bit longer than a week. I have had a friend staying with me for 2 whole weeks. I live on my own and it's the first time for a long time I've had somebody with me in the house, and it has been a real delight. Before that, in the week before, one of the most beautiful days I had, I'm able to get onto the moors and see the heather where I live. It's only a couple of miles up a big hill. And I went up there and I just found it so beautiful, so calm and so colourful. It filled me up with emotion. And I think because I'm older, I'm learning to appreciate the smaller things in life instead of looking where I've been and where I'm going next and what train do I catch to London.
That's a lovely moment, and heather is so evocative and such beautiful to walk amongst the heather. And of course, walking, are you a regular walker? Do you do a lot of walking yourself?
I can't walk now. I used to do a lot of walking,
right,
but I've got back problems which we don't need to go into, but I don't walk like I used to.
And one of the things that, of
course,
course,
a mile or two.
Okay, well, it's always important to take some exercise that's proportionate to what you're able to. And in fact, one of the new things that's been developed by Care Visions and is starting this Friday is a physical exercise class using Zoom for people to enroll in. So anyone who's interested in joining a free physical exercise class, the first one is this Friday, and you can go and sign up on the Care Visions site on Facebook. The numbers are limited, so you need to get on there quickly if you want to join.
Would you be able to send me a link, because I have a big database and I can spread it?
Yes.
Please.
Yes, no, we'll definitely do that. Christina, who will be listening in, will be making sure that we send you the link straight away.
Thank you.
Because I think lots of people would benefit from that. And it leads me into really the first question I wanted to ask you. What we've learned an awful lot during coronavirus is how isolated people can become. And I think you said to me when we were talking before this that I think almost 4 million people, their only company at home is their television, and people are very isolated. What have you learned about how you deal with that isolation and loneliness during coronavirus?
Well, I feel I've been in a very fortunate position because I had a lot of work, voluntary work, with the campaign to end loneliness, a village good neighbours that I helped somebody set up. So I do have mental activities to do and keep me busy. And as I said earlier to you, I've had all my meetings on Zoom, and I can't believe the time I've spent in front of the computer. I've advanced with my digital techniques, I'm pleased to say, and it's that's how I've got through this. It has, and I've also had quite a few people whom I've had regular telephone conversations with, people I've known but didn't see very often, and I know they're housebound, and so I've taken the opportunity to have regular phone calls, and the two of them together, and people have rung me for phone calls. I've been very fortunate, and that's how I've kept going, better than I thought I would. And
That's
I met
very
a lady
good.
this morning coming out of the village shop, and I said, I think we older people are more resilient. She says, I agree.
Well, you're a wonderful example of somebody who is resilient. And if I can be bold enough to share your age with everybody, you're 85, but you're keeping young and active. And I think, what is it that keeps you going? How do you keep so young and active, Sheila?
I think it's the genes.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of longevity in my family. And I think the Americans did a study of what had the biggest influence on longevity, and it is your genes. My father lived to be 91. So I look forward to being healthy like them. And I have kept healthy, and that's very helpful to do things when you're healthy. And I know how lucky I am because of all the older people who are often crippled with arthritis and can hardly move. And I just thank my God that I am as healthy as I am. And
is that about keeping mentally healthy as well as physically? Do you think both are important?
The meetings, you see, what this afternoon, looking at the kind of answers I would like to give to the subjects that we discussed, that's mental, and I get reports, I get to know what's going on, and so that keeps me alive with a lot of people. I had a meeting cancelled this morning, but it's been put forward to Friday now. So and that's for planning the workshops that I'm doing.
Yeah, and one of the things you mentioned when we spoke before is a new book, I think by Guy Robertson, on positive aging. Can you tell me a little more about that? Because I suspect lots of people would learn.
I've only read the 2 first chapters, so I can't say very much, but what I would like to say, it's about positive aging, and it is positive. And the next chapter, the second one, I've just finished it, and it really is helpful. It puts so many things in connection with older people and our life and health into perspective. And I think that's what a lot of us need. I think when I was first on my own 20 years ago, somebody said to me, you must remember you're vulnerable to your own thoughts. But if you keep mentally active, and one of the best things, and a lot of people do it, they age, university of the third age, and learning languages is a superb way. And a lot of the classes are going online. Been a lot of changes to that kind of thing, which of course will bring me to my digital participation part of the interview.
Well, tell me more about digital participation, because lots of people are quite frightened about doing things online and digitally. What's your advice and what's your experience?
Well, I know what you say. I'm just getting where I am with the notes. I've been involved with Loughborough University, and they've done a huge amount of research on how older people learn, how they can learn, and the effects on aging of learning. And you probably know that, to put it very simply, our brains don't age, but our bodies do. So we must use them to keep them going. And they have produced, of Loughborough University, at the request of the Department of Digital Culture and Sport, a toolkit on how people learn best. And there's also a case study in the book of a drop-in centre in Long Eaton, which has been running for 15 years. And the two main key items for me are that older people must say what they want to do with the equipment they've got, not have it imposed on them and taught. They like to drop into this centre, bring their equipment and say what they would like to learn next. And it's putting people at ease, very relaxed. It gives a social atmosphere of being with other people as well. And you can ask the same question as many times as you like, and they won't think you any the worse for it. And as you rightly say, a lot of people are very nervous about using the computers. And even though they might have equipment, they then don't use it often enough. So it's about getting more people who have some equipment to join drop-in centres locally and get people to use it more and use it daily. Because I had a friend of mine, she is 91, and she said her daughter had offered to buy her an iPad. She said, I wish I'd let her do that. Anyway, I said, oh, well, if she offers you again, do get it. So she has done. And her son works in Germany. She talks to him every night via Zoom. And her daughter lives in other parts of Yorkshire, and she uses, talks to her as well. And it's given her a new lease of life in the house. And she doesn't want to use it for anything else. She's got an iPad, and what she's doing suits her perfectly. We try to overwhelm older people with what they can do. And I think that's the wrong way. It frightens them to death, half of them. I'm speaking in sort of broad terms, not everybody, but fear is in this toolkit. What are the barriers to older people? It gives you a really good sense of what are the barriers. I've proofread the book, the document, and I have taught older people for a number of years. And so I have a lot of insight into how they like to learn, what kind of atmosphere they like, and I can certainly recommend this toolkit. At the moment, it's lodged with the Department of Digital, and they're waiting to launch it. And you can get a copy of it if I can have names and you're interested in why you would want one, what you do for your work. And I can get one sent to you. They are embargoed, but the MPs now got it. But
it'll be coming out before too long for everybody.
Well, I wanted it out a long time ago, and so has a professor from the university wanted it out. So we are pushing very hard to get it out, because there's also, as I said, the case study in it, and it should be very helpful and very useful.
Well, it would be very good to get other people who are watching their comments, and anyone who wants to join in and ask a question of Shelagh on what she's saying, please use the comment space on Facebook, and I'll try and squeeze in a couple of questions at the end of our conversation this afternoon. But I was thinking back to your career, Shelagh, and you were an adult and further education teacher. And one of the things I was taken in is the way you ran classes teaching people how to cook nourishing meals and then sit down and eat the meal together. And that is very different from the technology, but it seems to me the same idea. This was people who probably never thought they could cook a meal at all. And you helped them realize that it wasn't too difficult. You could cook a meal. And maybe learning to use digital technology is the same kind of breaking out of your own boundaries and feeling confident.
I would agree with you, because there are lots of, if you look into Mary Berry's recipes, they usually give you a YouTube clip of how to do it and how it should turn out. And
that's about healthy eating, healthy body, and healthy mind. They all go together, don't they?
No, I got as far as being interviewed for Farmhouse Cookery.
Oh, really? How wonderful. Well, no, that's really important.
But my older people's class, it ran for about 15 years. It was so popular. I think in those days there weren't as many luncheon clubs, but they have sprung up in a lot of places. And it's the social aspect of sitting down with somebody else to eat a meal that's so valued.
And do you think we can do, given the constraints of lockdown and the coronavirus, do you think we could do some kind of online cookery classes that people could join? Would that work?
I think that would be a very good idea, because I used to have lots of recipes specifically for older people. And even now, although I've been on my own for a long time, I often find still food I haven't used, and I over provide when I'm doing my shopping. So all of that can be taken into account with the recipes that you offer people. Yes.
So, well, maybe we have found a new career for you, Sheila. We may be asking you to host some online cookery classes for older people, which would be a lovely thing to do.
Yes. Well, if I can have 6 in my house, we could have 2 or 3.
Yes, you could.
And sitting down eating what I've done in my kitchen.
And then you can have as many as want to join on Zoom, watching you cook and learning how to do it. That would be a lovely. Okay, we'll come back and talk to you some more about that. That's a great idea.
Good.
What do you think? I'm just interested in thinking about the way people look at their lives as they get older. And my suspicion is people give more attention to drugs and medical treatment than they do to just healthy living. Do you think we're too concerned about going to the doctor and getting drugs, and we ought to spend a bit more time thinking about living healthily?
Well, I need to be very careful what I say here, because the way I do know quite a bit about the health services, because I was a non-executive director for about 15 years. And the structure at the moment, the GPs seem to pass them on to consultants for tests and everything all the time. And it does make you wonder if everything is necessary. But if I may quote a scheme in Dorset, which was at least 10 years ago, but I've still got it on file. They had so many older people going to the GP, and all they were really wanting was to talk and have a chat with somebody, that they started doing this, what's now called social prescribing. And they gave them the contact details to go to a luncheon class or a luncheon club. And it reduced the number of people going to the doctors. And it also, they evaluated it at the pounds it had saved of tests that consultants had put them through. So I think we need to find the reason they do go in the first place, and then maybe we can do something through social prescribing to keep them healthier.
That sounds a very good idea, because of course the minute you get to the hospital, you're seeing a consultant about a particular disease, aren't you? And it forgets the fact that there's the rest of you as well. There's not just the one disease.
No, it is. I try to keep away.
That's probably part of the secret of your success. Tell me a little bit more about the campaign to end loneliness. So you said you're an ambassador.
I joined. It's been launched about 8 years ago now, and I joined straight away because I was very, very interested in it. And I have to say, I'm amazed that after 6 years, the campaign had got itself very well known. I never thought it would quite get there. And I remember reading in a book that loneliness is the most painful disease of our kind, of our time. And it was something that needed bringing out. And there is so much people can do for their neighbours. I know it's easier in a village, but there's a wonderful scheme in the Dublin docks where they created communities in every street so that each neighbour knew each other. And I was also the executive member for social services for North Yorkshire County Council. So of course I came across so many older people, what their problems are, genuine. That's my steam train.
How lovely.
You can hear it. And I think that taught me it made me very sympathetic. And because I have now had 1 or 2 things that normal older people, average older people get, I have a lot more understanding of the help they might need. And I certainly have a lot of compassion for those who try their best to do it for themselves, because that's what the principle's about. You enable older people to do things, don't do it for them.
Yes.
In fact, I need a skill being shown on the computer. I don't want somebody to do it for me, say, click here, click there. That won't go into my long-term memory.
Well, you'll never remember it. If somebody does it for you, you'll never remember how to do it.
But it's surprising how many grandchildren, that's how they want to teach their grandmas.
They also do it so quickly that you can't follow it anyway.
I know. Tell me about it.
Do you think there's been...
I'm that generation that needs to write it down.
Yes.
And I make no apologies for it.
Well, I don't think there's any harm in that. And then you can keep a note of it and you can look at your notes and remember
Till Windows changes.
Yes.
I can do with a chat with, what's his name from Microsoft.
Well, to tell him not to update it all the time.
Yes, I know.
Yeah. And have you seen during coronavirus, have you seen more of that local community activity of ways of supporting people happening?
I have locally that I've been in connection with. We set up a scheme for those who offered to do shopping for older people who were shielding and weren't supposed to go out at all. And that has led to quite a lot more volunteers coming forward in my village, some of whom were beginning to say they're now back at work and they can't do any more, but others are wanting to join the Befrienders, where we're able to train them and do the tests for them and the DBS checks and everything, so that they can join us and help more people.
Because so people get quite frightened about that, Sheila, when you say all the checking and testing and the DBS checks. So you're Linking Lives is the organisation that you help develop, isn't it? And I'm just interested to know, how do you reassure people that becoming a volunteer and a befriender isn't so difficult and the necessary checks are necessary and manageable?
Well, I have to say, for a few years, I tried to get the red tape, as I call it, reduced, because it has put a lot of people off volunteering. They say, I've been in this community all these years and nobody's ever questioned my character or what I've done. But I think we owe it to anybody whom we're helping that they're able to trust us and get a reputation for being trusted. We live in difficult times, and I'm now convinced it is the right thing to do. And we set up also a volunteers group so that they could meet together and discuss their own issues that found in volunteering, and then come back to us with anything they thought we should, as trustees, because we've now formed a charity, that we need to change or the way we do things. And it is the right thing. And the befriending, which I may say at this point in time, I think is the best one-to-one way of reducing isolation. And the COVID, what I'm delighted to see that during the lockdown, nearly everybody who was befriending on a one-to-one basis has done it by telephone every week. The Linking Lives have just kept on, and we've got more volunteers come forward than we've ever had across England for Linking Lives. That's a national charity, and that's done in churches.
Right, lovely.
Yes, and of course there are a lot of older people in churches and attend, and so we've been able to keep in touch with them. And some churches are better than others, but some are doing extremely well in keeping everybody involved and finding out whether those who are on their lists are all right.
That's very good. That's
lovely. There's also
and
the identification of those who are at risk.
Yes.
And that's something we should never forget.
We use the term befriending, which you understand what it means, but not everybody viewing will understand what it means to be a befriender. Can you just explain a little bit about, if somebody was thinking, oh, I might be able to do that, but I'm not quite sure what it involves. What does it involve?
It involves visiting a person on a regular basis in their own homes. Sometimes their befriender takes them out to a concert, and that's much. We had a lovely letter from somebody who'd been taken out for the day, and she said her life had been renewed. She'd got so much pleasure from seeing this person. So that's the principle of it. But you do have to spend time, and this is where the trustees who run it make sure everything's all right. Do ask them to do some training, because you've got to make sure you match the person, and that each of you is comfortable, and that needs some professional help. And so you can do things for yourself, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to join a group more local and do more work, then you do need to join, and they will take care of all the legal aspects of you doing your befriending. Because if you take somebody in a car and they pay you for taking it, that is something for your insurance company to be aware of.
Yes.
Whereas if you just take them, that's all right if there's no money passing. And
Right.
so we asked, well, we don't want people to feel that they can't ask for money if they haven't got too much themselves. So we might ask them, if they say, well, I would like to pay something, they say, well, would you like to give a donation to our charity? And that's how we make people feel comfortable.
That's a very good way of doing it. And presumably not all the linking the people matching of people works first time. So people shouldn't feel embarrassed if it doesn't work.
You're right, it doesn't work. And so we get somebody else to try.
Yeah, yes. But that's okay, isn't it? It's better than people feeling forced into something that's not feeling right.
That's correct. You've got to make everybody feel comfortable or it doesn't work.
Yes. Do you think it's important to make sure the government does more to help people tackle loneliness and isolation? But they've made quite a lot of noise about it. I think they had a minister was appointed with responsibility for loneliness. Is that making a difference?
She's still there as far as I know. You must forgive me because I've forgotten the name.
They keep changing.
Well, it has changed 3 or 4 times. That's the trouble, isn't it? Everything changes. But I think they are aware of the government of the loneliness, and certainly organisations like Age UK. And by the way, you can always contact Age UK and offer to be a befriender, and they too will provide all the necessary legal requirements for you doing that job. So it isn't just your local ones. If you want to do something further afield, that's another opportunity. But they do a lot of campaigning for older people. And I've been involved on their sounding board for a couple of years.
Oh, right, good.
Say what we feel about the things they're planning to do. And of course, the latest one was the television licenses, which I was very disappointed in the government's answer.
Yes, we had the charity director of Age UK was my guest last week, Caroline Abrahams.
Oh, I know.
She was saying that people should do whatever they feel is appropriate about the TV license. She couldn't tell them exactly what to do. But what would your advice be to somebody who suddenly, may have been getting a television license for 10 years and suddenly is now being expected to find £150 or more than £150?
And I would never say somebody should break the law. That would be far too stressful, I think, for a lot of older people. I would like to say I'm always a big believer in compromises, and I do think the government could have compromised on it.
Yes.
I don't agree with people having free TV licenses if they do have a salaried work.
Yeah.
Just because there's somebody in the house who's over a certain age. I don't think it's fair on other people. But they kept that, and if they hadn't done that, it would have saved them £150 million, had the costs worked out. And I also made the point that a lot of these people will suffer if they haven't the money to buy one.
Yeah.
Government are turning around and saying, but you can claim pension credit. Now, I know you can pay pension credit, but it can, if you've got savings, it depends how much the saving. You can have savings and get pension credit, and it is available for each partner in the house, the husband, wife, or the partnership can each claim it. And
that's important to remember because people don't realise that it could be both.
No, that's why I made the point. It is worth remembering. But, a lot of people aren't in a position to claim it, and they haven't claimed it. I mean, and I've said many times, I've had workshops on claiming it, and they've said, I don't want the government to know what savings I've got. So you can't help them if they're not prepared to do that. And the government's attitude, because I've worked with the DWP, we shouldn't expect to pay out for people who have a lot of savings.
But there are some people, as you say, there's
yes.
There's millions of people who live on their own. Their only comfort and company is their television, And
well,
some of those people can afford it, but others may be finding it difficult. And
they
I think
will
your message is
finding it. Yes, they will. And I
Your-
don't know what the answer is. In fact, I think I could do with a chat with Caroline Abrahams.
maybe you should follow up with her. But
See what
your message is it's important to remind people that pension credit is there, and although
it's important, yes, and you can have some savings and still get it.
Yes,
So,
that's a very good message.
Yes.
Sheila, we're running out of time. I've got a couple of questions that people have sent in, so let me ask those to you, and then we'll have to come to a close because we're getting up to 4:30. So the first one is someone called Gwen who said, "I've recently retired and would like to put my time to good use. Hold on, I've just lost it. What can I do to support the campaign to end loneliness?" So what can an individual do to support the campaign to end loneliness?
You can do things on your own. If you've got a neighbour whom you feel is in need of, say, a regular visit or doing a bit of shopping, you don't have to belong to a group, or you can contact Age UK in the first instance, or I think your local library, if it's still there, will have a list of the organisations and the charities that are working in your area. But the beauty of being with another charity is that, as I say, they do all the legal work for you and train you. And
I think lots of charities are always looking for volunteers, aren't they? People.
Yes, I tell you a good one is the Royal Voluntary Services, used to be WRVS.
Yes.
And where whatever training you get, you can be a member of the RVS in any part of the country and use that training. So that's
good. That's good advice. So Age UK and RVS are two organisations that would be worth thinking about. And the second question I've got here, which is similar, but I'll ask you, from someone called Jean, who said, people in care homes and shielding at home can become enormously isolated, as we've been discussing. What can any of us individually do to help? So similar kind of question, really.
They are. I do know people who've taken their smartphones into a home so that they can show it. And believe it or not, it's exactly the same in Holland. I have a friend who does voluntary work, and she's had to go and see her regular visitor through a pane of glass and talk a bit louder. But if you've got telephones, you could talk to each other with mobile phones. But I find it a very, very sad situation, because I used to be on the committee for registration of nursing and care homes, and they are expected to receive exactly the same services from health or social care as anyone in the community who's not in a home. And I do think this is something I'm moving sideways, as I call it, on it. But I think there's been a lot of treatment that I wish could have been different. I was appalled with some of the things I've heard and read about.
Well, that's probably a whole separate conversation. And as you flagged the fact that everything at the NHS is paid for by the government, we pay our taxes and we get the NHS. But of course, for care homes, people have to pay an awful lot themselves.
Yes, they do.
And that's quite a challenge for many, many people. Yes. Sheila, we're going to have to leave it there. We've gone over our time. We haven't covered everything we could have done, but you've been really inspiring to talk to. So thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. And we look forward to talking to you again sometime, maybe even getting a cookery class with you. Sounds a lovely idea.
I'll wait for your call.
And just to let everyone know that next week, my guest is Othniel Blake, who is the campaigns director at Methodist Homes for the Aged, who are one of the biggest providers of home care support. So Othniel will be with me next week. Please join me at 4 o'clock next week. But Sheila, thank you once again for being my guest today, and have a good rest of the day.
Indeed, I've enjoyed it.
Take care. Thanks, everybody. Bye.